Welcome back into the world of the Apostolate for Family Consecration. You've now had 3 weeks to pray, to meditate, to reflect on Cardinal Arinze's book, Alone with God. And I believe we all agree that this is just a marvelous summary of our faith, a book that we could go back to over and over again with our families and at dinner time and discuss, because it really presents the faith in such a concise way. Now, we do have some new guests with us. Besides Cardinal Arinze, our author, we have Bishop de Mello from Karwar, India. Bishop de Mello has been a member of our advisory council for a number of years. Members of the Apostolate are in his diocese, and we want to thank His Excellency for joining us. Your Excellency, thank you. And by my right side here, many of you have already seen Keith Fournier on many of our programs, co-hosts our series on healing our families, and also we've done a number of Peace of Heart forums together. We're working very close. And Keith is Dean of Evangelization here at the Franciscan University of Steubenville. Keith, thank you for joining us.
It's great to be with you, Jerry.
Right. And we're going to dive right into the rest of this book. And the subject we'd like to discuss now, I'd like to maybe just repeat what Mother Teresa was saying. We sort of ended the show last time, Your Eminence, talking about Mother Teresa. She said the fruit of prayer actually is faith. The fruit of faith is charity, and the fruit of charity is service, and the fruit of service is peace. And now we're going to be talking about charity. And Your Eminence, what did you mean when you got into the subject of charity, which is the most important of all virtues?
Well, put in brief, we can say that charity is love of God. And that love of God must include love of our neighbor. Mm-hmm. And in a way, it can be called the mother of all the virtues, because the other virtues will take their proper shape if they have the dimension of charity. It's easy to say, not as easy to do, but it is necessary. Charity is so central that St. John says that God is love, and he who abides in God abides in love, abides in God, and God in him. And Christ himself gave love of one another as his new commandment, so that in a way we can regard charity as an umbrella under which all the other virtues take shade and take shape.
Your Excellency, maybe you can expand on the virtue of charity.
I was just wondering when His Eminence was saying about charity as having an object, as God as his first object, and the neighbor enveloping this dimension of charity. Jesus Christ gave it as a new commandment, but he added, you must love one another as I have loved you. Unless that I have loved you, which is the dimension of sacrifice in love, then love will not be love without sacrifice.
That's right.
It's very good.
Yes.
Very good.
Keith, what are your insights on charity?
Well, I'm just thinking of an old saying that I grew up hearing all the time: charity begins in the home. And I think so many people watching the Apostolate videos are people who are trying to live out their vocation in the home with their children and trying to grow in holiness and trying to grow in charity. And it just seems to me that the opportunity in family life to learn self-sacrificial love is there morning, noon, and night. And we who are called to the lay vocation within family, if we can grab hold of it as a real vocation, as an opportunity to become more like Jesus, then I think we're going to be able to grow in charity, and particularly with our children and our spouses. And maybe, Cardinal, you could share a little bit about some helps along the way, because I have 5 children, and that presents a real opportunity to grow in charity daily. I love them dearly, but they're always not perfect angels. And how can that kind of experience, lived out by many fathers and many mothers, produce the virtue of charity within us?
Well, indeed, holiness is perfection of charity. So whoever is more perfect in charity is holier. And it is charity in the context in which the individual finds himself, herself. Therefore, it must begin with appreciation of the other person as person, not only created by God, but also redeemed by Christ. Then love of another must want the good of the other, not consider what I can get from the other. It must, in our earthly condition, contain, as the bishop has well said, a sacrificial dimension. Because the good of another sometimes means that I should be ready to suffer something myself. Indeed, my love of another can be measured by my readiness to suffer rather than let the other suffer. Also, to accommodate others as they are, with their positive points and negative. They may not be 100% saints, but I should also not forget that I am not.
That's right.
A saint. Because often we only think of the limitations of the other, and we ourselves have ours. Sometimes when we get angry with, let us say, the children, or a teacher with the students, part of the fault may be with the children, but part of the fault may be with the parents, or the teacher, or the priest, or the bishop. All of us have that necessary self-examination to do. Therefore, you can see immediately how charity includes many other virtues. Justice,
Right.
humility, acceptance of self-limitation, recognition of God's goodness to us, and God's mercy, and God's open-heartedness. All that disposes us to love another more. It also includes forgiveness, to forgive others, and then we can ask God to forgive us. Reconciliation. You can see immediately the difference between a family where there is love, mutual love, serious love, not love as a word that has undergone inflation with the television, and not that type of love and cinema, not that. But serious appreciation of the other, as Christ taught us in the gospel. Greater love than this no man has, that the person give the life for the other that one loves. And he not only said it, but did it.
Right, he did it.
You know, Your Excellency, I know in family life, so often, I know we're experiencing in the United States, so often parents back off of curbing bad habits of children, maybe teenagers or on drugs or in a lifestyle or television or other things that are just not normal, and they sort of rather have peace in the home rather than charity, or rather than chastising the children. Or maybe you just give us some of your insights on that. Is there a priority in charity?
I think in other words you're referring to the generation gap.
Yes, right.
Because children always accuse the parents when they advise them that there's a big gap between you and me.
Right.
Mom, how can you say this? You don't understand.
Right.
Yeah. So, but then the parents, what do? They try to understand the children, but not in the way they should understand them. Because now the children are carried away in that stream. They go to school, thinking it's quite different from the home. They go to the playground, ditto.
Right.
But when they come back home, it is the old, age-old traditional way of living. So there's a regular conflict among in the minds of the children. They do not know where to go, where to turn.
Right.
But the force that drags them away from the home is greater.
That's right.
Than in the home, because father and mother are very busy. They cannot spend more time, with the children, so that they can inject into them the spirit of prayer, the spirit of sacrifice, the spirit of love one another. That is much more important than having a game. That the values that we stood for in our traditional families are no more there. So they don't understand. But I think we must fight back. The parents must fight back in a very pleasant way. Number one, by showing greater love for our parents, for our children, and at the same time making them understand how the age-old traditions of love, sacrifice, understanding, accommodating to each other's needs and so on is still valid, and it's very important. For that matter, they can tell them when they grow up, they will remember that these values are very important for the success in life.